Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's December 6th. Today, we celebrate the botanist who made his mark in human anatomy and the botanist who lost his Civil War specimens to a Confederate raider. We'll hear the most popular poem about trees written by a poet who was killed in World War I. And we grow that garden library with a self-published humorous garden book by one of my favorite garden authors. I'll talk about a garden gift that you can split, one for you and one for a gift, and in the perfect price point for holiday gift exchanges. And then we'll wrap things up with a story about the protection of the work done by botanists over a century ago. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. Here's today's curated articles. Quebec Terre à Terre shared a Dianthus Syrup recipe, and it caught my eye because Dianthus are so beautiful, especially when you harvest them and then you have the petals in a container, some type of bowl or saucepan. They're just adorable. One article I found from the 1800s said it was regarded as exceedingly cordial and wonderfully above measure comforts the heart. It also said that clove-pink petals with verbena infused in alcohol was a refreshing bath liqueur. But in this article, they talk about making a simple Dianthus syrup, a lost art. Another article that I had sourced this week was talking about how a third of Africa's tropical flora is threatened with extinction. This was by phys.org.com. And apparently there's a red list that is a go-to for birds and mammals, but it only covers about 10% of plants. The red list lists the species that are under threat of extinction. A new study's preliminary estimate found that a third of Africa's tropical flora, or roughly 7,000 species, are potentially threatened with extinction. And then the Missouri Botanical Garden has a new exhibit. It's called The Potato, Apple of the Earth, and it's on display through March 17th. When I shared it in Twitter and on my Facebook accounts, I said, "You say potato, I say potato exhibit." And did you know that the potato is the most important non-cereal food crop in the world? The Missouri Botanical Garden galleries are featuring contemporary artists, and each artist has interpreted the unique story of the potato, especially the historic impact of the late potato blight that devastated the potato crop in Ireland in the mid-19th century. Anyway, if you're interested in reading more about that, just search for potato the next time you're in the Facebook group, and this post will pop right up. Now, if you'd like to check out these curated articles for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it in the listener community on Facebook. So there's no need to take down notes or search for links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for the free Facebook group. In the search bar, type in the Daily Gardener Community, and then this group will pop up and request to join, and then I'll admit you, and I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of Johann Gottfried Zinn, who was born on this day in 1727. Zinn died at the age of 32, but he accomplished much in his short life, and he focused on two areas of science: human anatomy and botany. From an anatomy standpoint, in his early 20s, Zinn wrote an eye anatomy book, and he became the first person to describe the anatomy of the iris in the human eye. There are a number of parts of the eye named in his honor, including the Zinn zonule, the Zinn membrane, and the Zinn artery. It's fitting that Zinn wrote about the iris, which of course is also the name of a flower. And so there's some charming coincidental connection between his two passions of anatomy and botany. In Greek mythology, Iris was a beautiful messenger, a one woman pony express between the Olympian gods and humans. Iris was the personification of the rainbow. She had golden wings and would travel along the rainbow carrying messages from the gods to mortals. In the plant world, the iris is a genus with hundreds of species and is represented by the fleur-de-lis. When Zinn was 26 years old, he became director of the University Botanic Garden in Göttingen. He thought the university was going to put him to work as a professor of anatomy, but that job was filled, and so botany was his second choice. Nonetheless, he threw himself into his work. When Zinn received an envelope of seeds from the German ambassador to Mexico, he described the blossom in detail, and he published the first botanical illustration of the zinnia. He also shared the seeds with other botanists throughout Europe. Like most botanists in the 1700s, Zinn corresponded with Linnaeus. No doubt Zinn's work as a bright young garden director and the fact that he tragically died young from tuberculosis spurred Linnaeus to name the flower Zinn received from Mexico in his honor. And so Zinn lives on in the name zinnia, a favorite flower of gardeners, and for good reasons. They come in a variety of vivid colors. They can be direct sown into the garden. They attract pollinators like butterflies, and they couldn't be easier to grow. And if meditation is something you struggle with, you can still become a Zinn master if you enjoy growing zinnias. And I'd like to think Zinn would be pleased being remembered by the zinnia because, like the iris, the zinnia has a connection to the eyes. We've all heard the phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, in the case of the zinnia, the Aztecs were clearly not a fan. In fact, the Aztecs had a word for zinnia, which basically translated to the evil eye or eyesore. The Aztecs didn't care for the zinnia flower, but don't judge them because it was not the hybridized, dazzling versions that we've grown accustomed to in today's gardens. You can thank the French for that. The original plants were weedy looking with an uninspired, dull purple blossom. This is why the blossom was initially called the Cressina, which means somewhat coarse, before Linnaeus changed the name to remember Zinn. Over time, the gradual transformation of zinnias from eyesores to beauties gave zinnias the common name Cinderella flower. And here's a little factoid. The zinnia is Indiana's state flower. And I like to imagine when it came time for Indiana legislators to vote in favor of the zinnia, Zinn was looking down from heaven and smiling as he heard these words. All in favor of the zinnia, say aye. And on this day in 1842, the Harvard botanist Asa Gray wrote to Joseph Henry, the first secretary of the Smithsonian Institution. Gray wrote the letter because he couldn't lecture at the Smithsonian due to his demanding schedule, but he also sent his reassurance that the Smithsonian was establishing itself as the scientific advisor to the United States government and not to worry about any future negative media coverage about the institution. Today is also the anniversary of the death of the Quaker doctor and botanist Jeremiah Bernard Brinton, who died 125 years ago today in 1894. During the Civil War, Brinton served as an assistant surgeon, and on September 14th of 1863, he was promoted to medical purveyor. It's hard to imagine, but Brinton managed to continue botanizing during the Civil War. One time he was going to collect a specimen, and he made a friend in Major General Governor K. Warren. And that little connection was a happy recollection for Brinton throughout the years. During the Civil War, there was a man named John Singleton Mosby, who was a Confederate raider. Mosby and his men conducted raids on Union soldiers and communications over the span of 2 years. On May 12th of 1864, Mosby and his men captured a group of supply wagons. Dr. Brinton narrowly escaped, but his collection of botanical specimens from Virginia were destroyed when Mosby burned the wagons. After the war, Brinton founded the Philadelphia Botanical Club. The highlight of his botanical life was guiding Harvard's Asa Gray and the Linnean Society's William Carruthers on a visit to the Pine Barren region of New Jersey. He successfully showed them an extremely rare plant, the Schizia pusilla, or the little curly grass fern. In the final years of his life, Brinton dedicated himself fully to botany. He loved to entertain friends in his botanical workroom at his home, known as the Den. And in 1895, when Brinton was 60, he died from a heart attack and was found sitting in his chair in the Den. A biographical sketch of Brinton in the Bulletin of the Torrey Botanical Club reported that on the last night of his life, Brinton had visited a friend, and they discussed a German poem called Good Night. It goes like this. Over the quiet pathway comes clear the bell ring sound. Good night, thy heart, now sleep may, and tomorrow a day comes round. Once more then, let us whisper a good evening and good night. The moon shines over the housetops. Our Lord keeps us in sight. In unearthed words, today is the birthday of the journalist, poet, and World War I soldier Alfred Joyce Kilmer, who was born on this day in 1886. Kilmer was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and he was killed in action on July 30th, 1918. And every year, Kilmer's childhood home at 17 Joyce Kilmer Avenue in New Brunswick holds an annual open house from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And Kilmer is best remembered for his poem simply titled Trees. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Plants Are Terrible People by Luke Ruggenberg. I had the pleasure of interviewing Luke a few years ago, and his love of plants and his sense of humor make for a delightful combination. Luke has worked in horticulture for quite some time, and this book gives you another crack at reading Luke's hilarious take on his favorite pastime, gardening. Personally, I love following Luke on Twitter because his perspective is so original, and he draws on the downright funny aspects of growing plants. This is Luke's second book, and it's a series of essays that offers another hilarious and heartfelt look at Luke's life with the most terrible people on earth, plants. I love what indie readers said about this book. They said, it reads like the kind of far flung ruminations a wacky mind might ponder during the mundane processes of working on a garden. Luke's book would make a lovely gardener gift for the holidays for yourself or someone else, because it's the kind of book that you can pick up and just read a funny story or two and then go about your day with a little boost of garden happiness and humor. Best of all, Luke's passion for gardening and for life make his stories especially connect with those of us who give gardening our all. Don't forget you can get a copy of Luke's book and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for under $14. It's time for today's recommended holiday gift for gardeners. And today it's the Fiskars Non-Stick Soft Grip Micro Tip Pruning Snip, and they come in a 2-pack. These are my favorite snips. You can make quick little precise cuts when you're deadheading or trimming. I love to use them inside. I also love to use them outside in the garden, especially when I'm doing my morning walkthrough. And you don't get any hand fatigue with these because you get that fantastic spring action design that opens the blade back up after each cut. And it's got that wonderful non-stick coating so that you don't have to worry about things jamming or a buildup of sticky resin. And it's got a full lifetime warranty. And you can get the 2-pack for a gift or give one and keep one for yourself and support the show by using the Amazon link. And the 2-pack is selling for $23.99. So if you're looking for a gardener gift that's around $12, the little micro tip pruning snip is the perfect idea. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Last year on this day, in a post on iDigBio, we learned that over 100,000 specimens that make up the University of Cincinnati's botany collection were going digital thanks to a grant from the National Science Foundation. In the post, the herbarium curator, Eric Tepe, opened a folder on his desk to reveal a flower that was plucked on a spring day in 1884. He said, "This is running buffalo clover. It does really well where there's some disturbance in the soil. So in bison tracts, it would have been abundant," which is why it's called running buffalo clover. Sadly, it began to disappear across much of the West with the wide-scale slaughter of buffalo. And today, the clover is federally protected as an endangered species. So, the University of Cincinnati's specimen is especially valuable to researchers. In the article, Eric pointed out that this single specimen of running buffalo clover was shipped to 2 separate researchers over the past few decades, one in Kansas and one in Miami. Now, digitizing specimens means that everyone can have access, and shipping won't always be necessary. And that's a great thing because we learned just last year that the Australian Customs Department purposefully destroyed a herbarium collection because they were worried about bringing in invasive species. They were not aware that what they were intercepting was a priceless 200-year-old French collection on its way to the herbarium in Queensland. These kinds of tragedies can be avoided by going digital. And if something does happen to the original, at least there's a digital copy, which is better than nothing at all. In the Cincinnati Herbarium, like so many herbariums around the country, these collections have been waiting largely undisturbed for over a century. And I think it's tremendous that the valuable long ago work of botanists can be seen and referenced by all of us at any time and at any place, as long as you have Wi-Fi. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you on Monday.